right, welcome back to another video, guys. We have some more updates here for the Xbox Activision Blizzard acquisition. As we know, they made those 10-year deals with these streaming platforms like Boosteroid, Nvidia GeForce Now, Enware, and they made a 10-year deal with the Nintendo Switch and Ubisoft. Now, last week we saw that Microsoft was already starting to deliver on the deal that they made with Nvidia GeForce Now, where they were bringing 4 games over to the service, starting with Gears 5 and then 3 other games down the road by the end of May. And they have announced they are doing the same thing now here with the Boosteroid streaming service coming June 1st. So it says here, today we're announcing that Deathloop, Gears 5, Grounded, and Pentiment will be available to play for Boosteroid members beginning June 1st. And they also mention that this is just the start. They say we'll regularly add more hits and fan favorites from our extensive catalog of PC games. Boosteroid members will be able to access games purchased through Steam or the Epic Games Store for eligible titles to start, with support for games purchased through the Microsoft Store coming soon. So pretty awesome to see that they are already delivering on these promise to bring these games over to the actual streaming services before the deal with Activision Blizzard has even been approved, because once that happens, then all of the Activision Blizzard catalog is also going to be available here. Now, we know that they continuously are expanding, and if you are on Boosteroid, you actually get to access this via a wide range of different platforms. So it says for those who subscribe to Boosteroid, they can play PC games from Xbox across a wide range of platforms, including Windows, Linux, Android, Android TV, and Mac OS through an app, and even more devices through browsers and WebOS. And I find this part interesting because, as we know, Microsoft had to make their entire workaround with Xbox Game Pass and Xbox Cloud Gaming to get it to work on Apple devices, having it accessed through the browser. Now, with these third-party streaming services, they already have their apps that are available on things like Mac OS through an actual app itself. So that right there is another workaround where Microsoft and Xbox are going to be able to get their games accessed on those different platforms. But this is great. And this is another reason why I think at the end of the day, the entirety thing with the Xbox Activision Blizzard acquisition, it's good for gamers. It expands access and it gets people to be able to play games in more ways and in different places, which without the deal, without this entire thing happening, these things most likely would not have happened. And there's probably no way that Activision Blizzard was actually going to put their games onto these streaming services. So cool to see that this is happening, and we'll see what other games land on the service, as they do say more are coming. Now, sticking on the Activision Blizzard acquisition, we got this here on Twitter from Florian Mueller, and it's a big long thread. It gets into calling people out and stuff, but basically he is saying here that investment bank Macquarie says that Microsoft should close the Activision deal, and it says would result in a legal battle with the CMA, but one we think worth fighting, as it is precedent setting for an acquisitive company to allow one country to block a $75 billion deal. He says, so here you have one of the world's largest investment banks, among other things, the world's largest infrastructure asset manager, saying that it would be a viable and commercially prudent strategy to just close the ABK deal over the CMA's objection and duke it out in court. And then he goes on here to talk about Gaz from Game On Daily. Basically, I guess they disagreed. I'm not fully sure of what the entire drama is here between Foss Patents and Gaz, but he says they here, because I guess Gaz had a merger and acquisition lawyer on his last podcast. He says, then there's a merger and acquisition lawyer sitting on the island of Jersey, not quite in one of the world's financial or regulatory centers, giving a lengthy interview to a YouTuber discussing this case as if it were the average merger and acquisition case, such as the small deals on which he gets to work. The problem is that he applies conventional thinking to an unprecedented situation and tries to describe as binary questions that are not. He says, I blocked Gaz on Daily because he's just unreasonable. That lawyer is not unreasonable, but his understanding of how things really work is limited. And continues here going on to say, in my opinion, anyone in favor of the ABK deal should unfollow and ignore Gaz on Daily now that rules, I don't even know if I'm saying this right, but just somebody on Twitter with like 750 followers tweeted a segment of that laughable interview with the small island, not talking about the big island that's Britain, the merger and acquisition lawyer. He continues and says, it was really absurd when Gaz on Daily thought he could ridicule my position on A, the cat's authority to make a definitive decision in a case, and B, the CMA's limited independence. To put it into perspective, I won an EU Politics Award. And he just goes on talking about his accomplishments. I'm not going to read through that. But then he talks about how it was an easy decision to block Gaz based off of his interactions, and says, this screenshot shows that Macquarie and I have known each other for over several decades, but I haven't discussed the ABK situation with them. So the recommendation has nothing to do with my view. So it's a very interesting situation here. The main thing out of this entire thing, which I think is the takeaway more so than the beef between him and Gaz, is that there is an investment bank that is saying Microsoft should just go ahead and close the deal, which could potentially be significant, as these bigger players out there are saying that it's unreasonable for the CMA to have blocked this deal. We know that this deal is in the appeals process, and it may or may not, Microsoft may or may not win that appeal. But Florian Mueller continuously is saying that Microsoft can just kind of go ahead with this deal without needing the CMA's approval. We've also seen other analysts come out and say that there are other ways that this deal can go through if the FTC and the EU do approve this deal, such as just not having Activision Blizzard titles available on Game Pass for cloud gaming. And I think those are things Microsoft will probably be looking at. And we've seen Satya Nadella saying, let's just wait and see how things play out. So Microsoft, I don't think in any shape or form are going to give up on this. And they're going to continue to fight to the very end and use all of the power that they have to make sure that this deal does go through. And if that means just kind of ignoring the CMA and still going ahead and closing the deal and then going to fight it in court, that's something that they may end up doing. But this was just a pretty interesting morning, I would say, when it comes to the Activision Blizzard acquisition and just kind of the back and forth here between Foss Patent or Florian Mueller and Gaz, as he did have a mergers and acquisition lawyer on there, and him calling that merger and acquisition lawyer basically saying they just don't have enough knowledge on this to be able to comment properly on what is going on. And I'm not on any side here because I'm not the expert, but just some interesting stuff to keep your eye on. But I will leave the video there, guys. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up. If you're new here, hit that subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.
Bye.